What is up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is the 1.2 trillion plan to rebuild America. I didn't know it needed rebuilding.
I didn't.
And 1.2 trillion.
Does it need that much rebuilding?
That's insane. I don't know.
That's a lot of money to rebuild.
I'm trying to see I don't know what we're looking at. Oh, it's roads.
It's roads, it's highways, isn't
I think it was like the side of a bridge or something for a second.
I
but okay.
thought that too for the start.
I thought it was like the steelwork of the bridge something on the side. We're looking at roads on our first. My guess is going to be then, for 1.2 trillion, it's got to be something major. And the only thing I can think
maybe
of...
the roads, highways.
Roads and maybe public transport between states.
Maybe.
That's the only thing I can think of, which maybe America's lacking a little bit, public transport between. I understand why, it's a massive thing, and it could cost something like 1.2 trillion.
Yeah, true. To get the whole country connected.
To get the whole country to connect. I don't know if it will. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. I know you're connected by road, so you can just drive, and you guys like your road trips. But it'll be interesting. Let's see. This is by B1N, which you probably don't know what this channel is. It's like a massive construction company. I'm pretty sure their content's really high quality as well.
Okay.
So this should be quite good.
Yeah.
I've bigged it up now. Let's see. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Let's check out the 1.2 trillion plan to rebuild America. What we got?
Infrastructure. It might be the one thing Americans can actually agree on. Right across the country, roads, bridges, trains, water supplies and energy grids are all failing. And it's something US presidents have vowed to fix for decades.
The bridges and highways we fail to repair today will have to be rebuilt tomorrow, at many times the cost.
Our roads, our bridges, our schools.
It is also time to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure.
Oh wow.
America,
just
this is
in
how
general.
we truly build back better.
Now, some of those promises might finally be delivered on with the passage of this massive 2,700-page, $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill.
Wow.
America on Main Street and at the dinner table is talking about infrastructure when 20 years ago they didn't even know what that meant.
On this vote?
So how did we get here? What makes this moment truly different?
The yeas are 69.
And will this plan really be enough?
The nays are 30.
To save America's
Yeas
crumbling infrastructure.
The bill as amended is passed.
Ooh.
1.2 trillion though. That's incredibly...
A lot of money.
That's mad.
In 2021, the US got a C- on the American Society of Civil Engineers Infrastructure Report Card.
Oh, okay.
For those of you less familiar with the American grading system, that's not great when you're talking about a network that underpins the daily lives of hundreds of millions of people.
Oh wow.
Specifically civil engineers, what we do is largely unnoticed until something goes really wrong. So, you know, we've kind of been banging the drum, but people are like, oh, I have clean water and my sewers work, and yeah, I hit a pothole once in a while, but that's because of weather changes. And so there's been a lot of excuses because things systemically haven't been failing. They're now getting to the point where the infrastructure, you know, I laugh, it's not a midlife crisis, it's an old age crisis. It's impacting everyday Americans every day.
Wow.
To understand how we got here, you need to know how infrastructure gets paid for in the US. It varies by project, but typically some money comes from the federal budget, which is controlled by Congress in Washington, D.C., and the rest is covered by state and local governments or private companies.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty different from European countries who mainly fund their infrastructure through national governments. According to a Brookings analysis, federal infrastructure spending in the US peaked in 1933, as FDR invested in the New Deal after the Great Depression.
President Roosevelt headed for the Capitol by special train to begin planning $1.5 billion relief program.
That gave rise to programs like the Public Works Administration and projects like the Hoover Dam, LaGuardia Airport and the Lincoln Tunnel. It also tackled
injecting money into it after the Great Depression, rise the economy, but we're talking, I suppose, $1 billion then, like when in that time, is that much different to $1 trillion now?
Probably not $1 billion, but probably loads of money.
That's what I mean. I know that sounds mad to go from $1 billion to $1 trillion and say it's the same.
But I guess in terms of...
with inflation, and I feel like, please let us know in the comments, what would $1 billion right now, $1 billion back then be worth now? Is it close to $1 trillion, or is it just like 10 billion or something like that?
Yeah, I wonder.
Because $1 trillion is so much money. I know I keep saying it, but it's so much money in it. It's mad.
some less iconic but crucial upgrades like rural electrification and municipal water systems. Economists say that investment in infrastructure is what helped lead the country toward economic success in the years that followed.
You cannot build a modern economy on a crumbling infrastructure.
Okay, that's true. You've got a good base.
There was another spike in federal funding in the late 1950s during the interstate highway era.
For the progress that will keep this and all other American cities alive.
And then again in the 1970s when more comprehensive environmental and community development efforts were introduced. But since the 1980s, infrastructure has made up less and less of US federal funding. Today, only a quarter of public infrastructure money comes from the federal government, leaving already struggling state and local governments to cover more of the costs and the maintenance.
Okay.
Globally, the US has fallen behind other countries. Take a look at this chart showing G20 countries' projected infrastructure spending by 2040. China is leading the pack, with just over 5% of its GDP going towards infrastructure.
Oh.
The US is all the way down here at just 1.5%.
That is rare. When you talk about money, you talk about where you go, oh, one country's doing it well, for the US to be second to bottom.
Yeah.
But I suppose, like I say, it's one of them things where you can't see it crumbling. So it's kind of like, well, we don't need to put money into that, let's go and put it in our military because there's other threats out there. We need to upgrade
that. We know they need that now.
And then, like I say, unless something happens with it, it's like, oh, maybe we should have done it.
But
here's 1.2 trillion.
It's almost like, why, don't fix something that we don't know is broken.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep throwing so much money at something which looks fine, acts fine, but potentially could not be.
Yeah.
But that's why you got to be experts, so it's surprising that they haven't.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think in the comments below.
This new $1 trillion package would be the largest investment in decades, but not quite as big as the spending under the New Deal. Now that we've put this incredibly thrilling and easily digestible bill into context, let's get into what's actually inside of it. Remember, it's 2,700 pages long, so we can't cover it all, but let's start with the basics. Utilities. Every 2 minutes, a new water line breaks in the US, and roughly 6 billion gallons of treated water is lost every day. That's enough to fill over 9,000
that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Meanwhile, safe drinking water isn't a guarantee.
That's so much.
Water quality in the US varies from state to state, county to county, and can even depend on which street you live on.
Since 2014, Flint, Michigan has been synonymous with tainted water, a group of largely unregulated toxic chemicals widely used for years is now a growing threat to water safety in thousands of American communities.
The new bill would put $55 billion towards water and wastewater infrastructure. That includes $15 billion to replace lead pipes and $10 billion to address contamination from a chemical compound called PFAS, which is still technically legal to have in drinking water. In recent years, widespread power outages have become more common. Blackouts are estimated to cost the US economy billions of dollars every year. To address this, the bill puts forward $65 billion to improve the nation's power grid and invest in things like carbon capture and clean hydrogen. Next up, we have transportation.
I suppose if it's going to make you money, it's good.
Yeah.
Only 5% of US commuters use public transit to get to work. The vast majority of people drive cars.
Yep.
And depending where you live,
so only major cities will have like subways,
sitting in traffic jams, or navigating buckling pavement. According to the White House, 173,000 miles of America's highway and major roads and 45,000 bridges are in poor condition.
I mean, you're one bad day away from a collapse where a lot of people die.
The bill provides $110 billion for roads and bridges, with an extra $7.5 billion set aside to build electric vehicle charging stations. Meanwhile, public transit systems could get $39 billion, and Amtrak would get $66 billion to improve its 50-year-old rail service. Don't forget, the president is a big fan of trains.
Poor infrastructure costs the average person $3,300 a year, and that might mean, well, your power went out and you lost a refrigerator and a freezer full of food and you've got to replace it. You know, you have a water line break somewhere, you're either buying bottled water or you have boil water alerts.
There's even provisions for the further development and deployment of Hyperloop. While many of these priorities like roads, bridges and water supplies may seem familiar, this bill represents...
Let us know in the comments, what's Hyperloop?
I've never heard that.
I'm going to say, said it like we should know what it is.
I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of Hyperloop either, let us know in the comments.
Bridges and water supplies may seem familiar, This bill represents the first time that both political parties have really acknowledged that climate change is taking a toll on the nation's infrastructure. Tens of billions of dollars have been set aside to address floods, wildfires, and drinking water
That's
shortages.
mad, isn't it? That's scary.
But as we know, a lot can go wrong when it comes to infrastructure. The vision on paper isn't always what happens in reality. And these things take time, but the urgency to get things done this time around does feel different.
So I think in a matter of a couple of years, there's going to be a lot of orange cones out there. People are going to see construction in a lot of different areas and will see that their money is going to something in their neighborhood.
America's $1.2 trillion plan won't be enough to solve everything. There's still a gap of nearly $2.6 trillion to catch up with similar countries. But the bill is an historic investment in US infrastructure, and an opportunity for the construction industry to leave its mark on a country for generations to come. If you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you subscribe to the B1M.
I mean, subscribe here. Their link is in the description. I mean, for 2.6 trillion, just to catch up with countries.
That's crazy.
It is mad because, I mean, the US has so much money, but it's such an easy thing to fall back on. And I suppose it's the disadvantage of the US being so big that it costs so much to fix it. They've got multiple points failing, I guess. Not failing, but on the way out, I guess.
And a lot more things, like a lot more bridges, for instance, than other countries.
And it costs so much more money to maintain it compared to other countries, which is probably why it hasn't been maintained as much.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, touch wood. I've got no wood against me, but I'll touch my head, pretend that's wood. My brain. I used to be an old childhood joke, didn't it? But touch wood, nothing major does happen. Everyone's sound, and it kind of just fixes itself. And then with this bill, it slowly fixes. Smash that button if you enjoy, guys. Smash the subscribe and watch the video.
How fantastic.
And we'll see you legends in the next one. Peace.